when we looked at the COVID data in Tableau, we calculated the moving average. And we'll do so in Power BI as well, using the DAX language. Now, like Tableau's quick table calculations, Power BI allows you to do new quick measures. And if you look at it, one of the options that you get is rolling average. So let's click on that. Well, we want to count the number of cases, and we want to use the date, event date, and we want to do it over a 5-day period. So let's say OK here. And that's going to give us a new measure here. So let's see if we can use it. I'm going to create a new visualization, drag event date into it, change event date to the actual date, make it a line chart, and then drag this new measure into the y-axis, and then you see we have a problem. And the problem is that, click on details, you see time intelligence quick measures can only be grouped or filtered by the Power BI provided date hierarchy, and that's not what we want. We want it by the actual date. So let's come out of here, let's get rid of this measure, and let's get rid of this page. So we're going to have to do the calculation ourselves. Now, before we do so, remember that when we did this in Tableau, we also allowed the parameter to allow the user to change the period over which we calculated the moving average. And you will recall as well that the parameter mapped a text into a number. We're going to do something very similar in Power BI. So first we have to make sure that we can map the text to a number. So we're going to enter data, which allows us to create a table. The first column in that table is period. The second column in that table is number of days. We're going to map daily to 1, 5-day to 5, weekly to 7, bi-weekly to 14, and monthly to 30. And then we want to give to 30. And then we want to give that table a more meaningful name than tables, so we're going to call it periods. And we do load, and then eventually you will see that that table appear in the fields pane. So here we are. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new page, and we're going to add one slicer to it. We'll put county in there, as we did before. Then we add a second slicer, and we put period in there. And then you see we have a slight problem in that the order in which the values are listed is alphabetical. And that's not really what we want. We want them ordered by the number of days. So daily should go first, then 5-day, and so on. Now, to change that, we go to the data model, data view, click on periods, then click on the column period, and then you see the column tools comes up with the new group, sort by column. We do that. And you see that by default it will sort it by period, but that's not what we want. We want it sorted by number of days. So let's click on that, and when it's done, we'll go back to the visualization we're starting to create. And you see it now looks good, right? So we now have them in the order of the number of days. Second thing we now need to do is we need to take the textual value that the user has selected in this slicer and map it onto the number of days. So we're going to add a new measure, and we're going to call that moving window. And again, we're going to test to see if this period has a single value. So we really want to make sure that the user has selected something in this slicer. And if that is the case, then we're going to use the function values. And he said when a column name is given, returns a single column table of unique values. Well, what we want in this case is we want the number of days of periods, and otherwise we'll return 5. So if there's a single value that has been associated with this slicer, then we look at the corresponding row and return the number of days, and otherwise we return 5. So let's see if that works, and it does. So we're good. Okay, so now what we have is we have a mapping from the value of this slicer to a number in the moving windows measure, and then we're going to use that one now to calculate the moving average. So I'm going to go here into the 2020-22 cases, 2020-21 cases, select a new measure, and I'm going to call that moving average. Now that's going to be a slightly more complicated calculation. So we're going to start with the function calculate. And what calculate does, it takes an expression and a number of filters and it calculates that expression in the context of that filter. Well, what we want to calculate, we know, is the number of cases okay, and now we need to specify the filter. Well, there is a function called dates in period in Power BI, and dates in period takes dates, a starting date, a number of intervals, and an interval. Well, the dates we know, we want to look at the event date. So let's go to the 2020-2021 cases event date. We also know when we want to start. We want to start on the first of these events. Well, fortunately, there is a function called first date that again takes a date and then returns the first date in that for that date. We also know the interval because that has been given, that we just calculated that in moving windows. Okay. And then dates in period also requires that you specify whether you do it by day or week or month or whatever. So we do this now. Then we can close off the calculate. And obviously, since we're interested in a moving average, we now go to the periods moving windows. Okay. We'll see if that works. Seems to be okay. So let's come out of that. Add a line chart to the visualization we've been working on. Now what we're going to do is stick the event date in the y-axis, change it to a real date, and then put the moving average into the y-axis. And you see we now have what appears to be a moving average. We move it to daily. It becomes the spiky one again. If we do it weekly, we can smooth it out even more by monthly. And we can obviously also still use the other slicer. So what we've done is we've included the equivalent of a parameter by adding a table, Tableau parameter by adding a table. We created a measure, a calculated field that mapped the period selected by the user in the slicer into the number of days, and then we use that to calculate a moving average.